If you can build it here, you can build it anywhere.
I think I'm just going to say that if you don't like something, change it.
Okay, if I build one on wheels, what are my hurdles? If I build one without wheels, what are my hurdles? What's local code requirement going to drive me towards?
You could be 60 years old and you want to move your parents into an accessory dwelling unit. They have to go over the same hurdles as a 20-year-old that doesn't want to have the lifestyle.
What we need are safe, secure places that someone can actually afford to live inside of.
And this is a recurring theme of we're not going to let you do it.
You want a different lifestyle, it's not a tiny house podcast.
Well, I have high school interns in my office.
Yeah.
And they ask me, well, what is architecture?
Sure.
Just like you did.
Right.
What is architecture? I'm here, but I don't know what architecture is.
Yeah.
I say architecture is communication.
Okay.
That's all I do.
Yeah.
Graphic, written, spoken.
Okay.
That's my whole entire job.
Right.
Is communication. Because if you tell me what you want, and
I
I
thought
can't
it
tell
was drawing lines and pretty pictures.
I'm
so wrong.
That's
So the
graphic
hardest part, the
communication.
communication.
That's graphic communication.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
look like
writing a
this.
development guide, drawing the plan, and then going in front of somebody and explaining exactly what you're doing in terms that they understand, that's my job. That's what I have been honing for 30 years.
Right.
That's
is
way
my
harder
ability.
than what I thought.
That's my
Yeah.
ability to communicate.
Yeah. And it's a career, and it's like a labor of all of the. I mean, we're only as good as all of the experiences that we've had up until this point, or as challenging as many of those have been, right? Like,
Sure.
you have to
We learn
come
from all of
through so much friction to get it. And I said it to a lot of people before, and I said, no struggle, no strength, right? You will not get stronger unless you've had to work hard at something. It
Right.
just doesn't work without it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and let me couple what I just said with I also have to listen. Because if I can't figure out what you're telling me, I'm never going to give you the product that you want. I'm never going to be able to do that. And I'm only going to frustrate you. And so, or whomever it is I'm talking to, I'm only going to frustrate them if I'm not listening. So that prompted me a few years back to go back to school and get my master's degree in community development. Because what I have discovered over 30 years of doing this is that not every problem is solved by bricks and mortar. Not every problem is a project. Sometimes the problem is figuring out how not to have a project. And then my third...
That's not what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. You just two people's hearts broke.
Yeah. This podcast is over. This is podcast set.
Barna just
Signing
retired.
off.
Yeah.
Right now.
He retired. We're done here.
So,
okay,
and then my third degree that I'm getting ready to start a PhD in public policy. And
Perfect.
That way I can
That's
go
awesome.
to governments and say, guys, there's an easier way to do this.
For sure.
And let's figure out how to do this. Because I know I've been through enough of them that I know that there's an easier way to do this, but I have to be convincing. And sometimes you got to have doctor in front of your name, I guess. I don't know.
We've
But
said it before.
that's
Letters before
it.
and after your name are something that we're not going to do, right? I'm short of being here in front of a microphone the times that we're recording this, I am covered quite literally in sawdust.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I'm happy.
I only have 3 letters after my name.
Right.
It's GSD, man.
Right. And that's the get shit done. For those of you who do not know.
That's it.
It's overused, bro. I'm
Well,
just kidding. It's not. It's good.
Said the guy who got nothing done today. No, you got Polly on the floor.
How dare you?
You got Polly.
How dare you?
You eat donuts.
Yeah, that was my contribution today.
I raised my blood sugar to levels that might knock somebody else
You're
out.
gonna
Right?
stroke
So,
out pretty soon.
so with that though, and in doing that, are you noticing? Have you seen any kind of tidal wave shifts in trends as far as sizes or structures or things that? I'm thinking more specifically single family or small residences. Are people coming to you with like, I want to do a smaller house? Are you seeing any of that?
I do. I do see a little bit of it. I've not had as much as I thought I would have. People have been talking a lot about millennials and how,
And they always do it with this.
yeah, they always do
it with
millennials with the air quotes.
What do these caterpillars got to do with it?
But how they can't afford to be out in the housing market. The housing markets are saturated. There's no, I think we're 95 plus occupancy rates in these
Super
high. And so there's
we're-
nothing to have.
A year ago, we were at 99.1.
Yeah, so
Occupancy.
Staggering levels of occupancy, which is great, but what's left?
Healthy is 5% from what I read. Like if you're around 5% vacancy rate, like that's kind of healthy.
Well, now it's a
to have, and now
monopolized
it's like
market.
zero.
If you own, you're raking cash in, and what you're really doing is with high rental rates, you're eliminating the opportunity for people to save money so they can ever have a down payment and gain their own equity inside of housing.
Well, you also have to understand too that Colorado is a vacation state,
Right.
and so it's filled with second homes. So,
Which is absurd.
well, it is and it isn't, but
We're so rich, guys.
again, we talked
Vacant
about
homes.
wealth, and that's true. Vacant homes most of the year they're just vacant because there's people out of Arizona and Texas and wherever come in in California and buy another house because they want to be able to come out and ski, and it just is vacant. And so the market is a strange one in a state like this. Florida's the same way. Arizona's the same way.
Yep.
They've got they're second home states, and so that's what we're full of.
Minnesota's
Second
like
home
that,
states.
but except that everybody still lives in state and they have a lake property 35 miles from their their
real
primary
house.
residence. It's so weird. Or maybe it's 100.
I'm gonna go to my
So-
summer
so do I-
winter cabin.
So am I seeing a shift? I'm not seeing a shift. I expect a shift,
Yeah.
but there's still too many people coming to me for 4,000 square feet. And I can give them 4,000 square feet. That's not a problem.
And the bank will lend them for 4,000 square feet because their employment history or they've done well with their portfolio. Because 4,000
Yeah.
square feet, to the construction costs on that
$800,000
is $800,000 minimum. That's actually a low end estimate for that. That's not counting ground development. That's not counting anything like that. It's $200 a square foot, and that's low. A contractor I spoke with locally, $215 was his low number. The ones in the Springs, $285
Yeah, I
isn't
was gonna
outside
say,
the
yeah.
realm, or higher. Obviously, you can go higher.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. You can put granite everywhere if you wanted to really bring those costs up, if that was your thing. But
It really wasn't that long ago that I would struggle. I would have people come to me and say, I want to spend $200 a square foot. And I would struggle being able to do that.
to jam it all in there.
Yeah,
Granite,
I would struggle.
custom cabinets.
Yeah,
and all
struggle to spend that kind of money.
right.
Oh,
Now you can't get away from it.
Or
Yeah,
you get
and-
drywall and 99-cent square foot
Oh,
flooring.
dude,
and
yeah.
now you're still at 200.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and when I started, again, 30 years ago, because I'm old, but
Jeez.
when I started, you could build a house for $75 to $85 a square foot.
Right. And there are still places that last year, before it got hit and everything, so the material shortage for lumber especially created a lot of unexpected rise in cost of construction because you couldn't put a number of people in the same place, or factories, people would get sick and
Right.
they get shut down. And so supply and demand enters into the conversation there, right? But there are places in the Midwest that a year ago were still in that ballpark.
Yeah.
That was what they said. Now, again, that's not counting your land and your infrastructure costs, and so those kind of have to come
Yeah,
with
development costs.
it. Yep. And I'm working with a customer right now, and I have them somewhere in the 165. But that's because I got away
And they
from
probably
it.
think it's cheap.
It's super cheap.
Yeah.
And it is.
165, yeah.
But
Sure,
it's-
let's build it tomorrow.
But it's steel instead of wood.
Yep.
And there are a number of ways that you can kind of, if you're flexible in your construction methods, it's kind of like having more than one fuel source for heat in your home. If you have an LP, an electric, and a natural gas, you'd only turn on the one that was the lowest price.
So and here's the other piece of the pie that you have to think about, and you haven't been hit with it yet, but you will.
Here we go.
And that is building codes. Sure. Residential building codes. We're now at 2018.
Yeah.
You aren't here, but I'm now working in 2018, and energy cost is the energy code is much more substantial.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that you guys are going to.
Costs have gone up.
Yeah, you guys are going to have
to.
to start struggling with that because that's going to raise your costs because you're going to have to insulate the hell out of these things.
Spray foam's expensive.
Yep. And
Boy, is it.
And they're already considering 2021.
Yeah, that'd be the next.
Yep.
I've seen, and it's funny.
Generally, they skip one.
Yeah.
Generally, they it's every 6 years that they change. But like Canyon went from 2006 to 2018 in one jump.
They were 09 to 2018.
No,
right?
26.
They were 6.
It's 9 here,
9 is
right?
2006.
Yeah, those two. They were 6.
They were 6, and they would jump to 2018, and people's heads exploded.
Bad.
Yeah, because it's like I don't even know. And frankly, I was in 2015 because the Springs is in 2015, and I had to go to 2018, and my first job is just to read the codes. I don't know what changed, and so I got to go in and figure out what changed. Yeah. You know?
And usually they're not like it's not like moving heaven and earth. Like, I mean, you're still going to have insulation in the wall. It's like, well, how much do we have to do it? Ideally, a lot of the times your construction material development is going to kind of move there so that when somebody comes up with a new thing, there's already a solution that's supposed to be in place, and that's why it's now being adopted. Like, this is the new standard.
Right.
At one point, we didn't have sheathing for walls. And can you imagine what people would have thrown their hands up and been like, what the hell is this, when they went from 1x planks to that as the standard. Right. So the technology does drive some of that.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe even a good part of that.
But those are the things, those are the other pieces and parts to that it drives cost.
Yeah.
There has to be somebody that steers the conversation in the right direction with regulatory agencies, whether it's at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, because they all have to be on board. Because I can't, again, even when I create something unique, it still has to go in front of somebody else's approval.
And this was the issue with the guy in New Mexico that Brad talks about every once in a while. There was an architect that lost his license at some point.
The Earthships.
The Earthship, yeah.
Oh.
And apparently, whatever state he was in,
It's New Mexico.
But I don't think New Mexico is where he was. I know that's where he went.
Yeah.
They stripped his license because he was doing stuff that was like, I think he was bending some stuff that he wasn't probably supposed to be bending.
Yeah.
Well, you built houses out of tires and glass and.
Well, that stuff's been around since the 70s, though. I mean, those are trauma walls.
That's what it was.
And,
This happened in the 70s.
Yeah, no, it was the 1970s stuff, and we just never we skipped it in the 80s.
Sure.
And now we're just getting back to it.
We were too busy
straw bale houses, but that's all old technology. That's not even new. It's just rediscovered.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
But you also have to understand too that. Talking about stripping licenses, that's my livelihood.
Right.
And so I have to do things by the rules.
Right. Yeah.
Because if you take my license, I no longer work.
Yeah.
I can't do anything.
Right.
And if you take my license, you're also taking my insurance.
Yes.
So I'm the guy that assumes all the responsibility. All my consulting engineers are the guys that assume all the responsibilities. Your ideas, we have to bring them to fruition. But we have to do it within the framework. Mm-hmm. And if we want that framework to change, we have to work toward changing the framework. Mm-hmm. So that's it's my world, not yours. And so I get that and it frustrates owners and clients, but it's still what I have to do.
It's math and money.
Well, so the first 7 episodes of our podcast here have been basically about the current policy and how we're kind of fighting that, and this is part of that process too.
Yep.
Is where we go
we
to all the
all
planning
have
and
to
zoning
know.
meetings, and we're trying to affect public policy, I guess, and the current code by fighting for smaller square footage,
what it is you want to
accessory
do.
dwelling units, and it's not even for us. Like I've got a house, I don't want an ADU, but people need it.
Sure.
So where does that come into some like local government? Because you mentioned that money moves all kinds of objects,
world.
right? That moves the world. Isn't the job of government, let's get a little bit political, to help everybody? The job of Florence City Hall isn't to help the guy with the biggest pocketbook. It's to help the community.
And to level the playing field with the guy with the biggest and the smallest pocket.
Is that
It's a question, maybe.
Loaded question?
No,
No.
I'm honestly asking. Like,
No,
there are laws right now and lawsuits that you created a policy in other states. Policies have been created that specifically force certain groups to not be able to afford a house, not be able to buy a house, not be able to live in certain areas. So when you create policies that even okay, just to get into it, Florence City Code still has servants in the wording of the code.
That'd be a living servant.
It's
a reference to slavery.
Yeah, it's a reference to slavery. That still exists in the code, so that's how updated the code is and how it's still viewing the community as servants and not servants.
Sure. Well, so government is a big word. And I think that
small town local government. Let's
Okay.
focus on that. We're not going federal.
I was going to say, because I mean, there's change on so many different levels, and it generally trickles down from the federal to the state to the local. So generally, there are policies and standards and practices that occur way up here where nobody actually uses them. They just talk about them, and then all of a sudden, way down here at the local level, you suddenly have to use them, and you can't use them well. Here's my opinion, and my opinion is not based on anything other than my opinion, and that is, I would agree with you that at the local level, government should be taking care of the community. It should reflect the community's sensibilities, their ethics, their morals. It should reflect that. And it should reflect it in the people who are working here, are hired here, and the people who sit on public commissions, who are asked to do it or who are elected officials. Because in my opinion, they should be reflecting what the community is about.
Do you find that to be true? That the not the employees, not the people employed at City Hall in whatever city you live in, but the people who are appointed to commissions and committees, that they accurately reflect and have the same values or needs as the community at large? Or is there a certain demographic that is able to be in those positions due to financial status, age, or some other reason?
Well, I think that, again, a pointed question, and I think it's an appropriate one.
That's what I'm here for.
I know. But
I'm here for the hard questions. Why is there for that?
You're not going to get impoverished people serving on boards.
No.
So their sensibility is not represented in the conversation that you would have, like at the Planning Commission, for example. Okay. So you're going to have people who, you're right, have time. Right, because they only work 8 to 5, and they can be on a commission. They only, they've been asked. So somebody, someplace said, I think that would be a good person's voice on this commission. So they've been asked, right? Because that's how planning commissions are. So
they're appointed, by the mayor.
Well, they are, but first you have to ask, and then yes, I'll accept the nomination, and then you submit the name to the mayor, and the mayor appoints you, and that's what you do. And so that's how those like the planning commission works. But let me finish.
If you're listening, that was a very important process that you just listed. Like, this is how you get on a commission if you want to do it.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, you can't submit
magic.
your name. For example, I mean, when I first moved to Colorado, I went to the city hall and I said, I've was a chair for a decade. I would submit my name if you guys, if a position came up. So you can ask to be on the commission, and they can, they can keep you on file, quote unquote.
Sure.
Circular file.
We'll keep you in mind.
Yeah, exactly. So is everybody's perspective being addressed? I don't think it is. I don't think it's with malice, though. I mean, maybe there's a person on there that just doesn't like you, and you're just not going to do it, and so they address you differently.
Sure.
But there's got to be consensus, and there has to be a real conversation. And that's one of the things that I hate about boards and committees is that you have to have opposing viewpoints.
Right.
You have to. Somebody's got to take, it's like the Supreme Court. Somebody's got to take the forward-leading edge, and somebody has to take the argument, and you have to have the conversation.
You can't all get along.
And then you have to reach consensus.
Yeah, you can't all get along and have
Well,
the same.
that's the
Even if I agree with you,
Sure.
even if I agree with you,
It's arguing
I still have to argue the point and say, okay, yes, but what about this?
But the important word there is you have to reach a consensus.
You do have to reach
It's not
consensus.
just my side versus your side, and I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm sticking to my guns.
Correct.
Because that's how it doesn't work.
That's exactly how it
government
doesn't work.
At the federal level, it doesn't work.
Yep.
At the local level, it can also happen. So, I
Yes.
mean, just what you're reading in the news, it's happening in your small town
Oh,
America.
it absolutely
on a
is,
different
because
scale.
I don't think anybody even uses the word consensus anymore, and it's terrible. And I always have to come back to it. I always have to say it's okay to have this conversation, and it's okay to have that conversation. But at the end of this, we as a board have to reach consensus.
At the very least, the resolution, right? Like however you want to phrase it.
Yep.
And the thing that I've noticed the most is that people get so emotionally charged in it that their ego swells inside of the room, and they're no longer they can't see the argument for the facts and the statistics anymore because they came into that argument already ready to fight for
They were
something.
loaded. Yeah,
they were loaded.
Yeah.
And that's not the right place for that to happen. This needs to be
but even if it does,
yeah.
it needs to be in the open, and people in the audience need to listen, and the board members need to listen to each other, and but again, at the end of the day, there's got to be consensus. We have to decide what it is. And so if you're trying, and one of the questions you asked earlier, and I want to circle back to it, and that is, you said, we go to the planning commissions and we're trying to get them to change things. Well, the planning commission really can't do anything. They're a quasi-judicial board. They can make decisions, but they're not the ones that then at the end of the meeting go to the city planner and say, this is wrong, you need to change it. And we're telling you to change it.
City council does that?
City council doesn't even, I mean, they can. I mean, they're empowered to do that, but it never happens.
So who does that? Who says they need something to change?
Well, it's generally the planners. Generally, you guys go in and meet with the city planner and say, this needs to change. I'd like it to be on an agenda. I'd like to speak to it. But
so
to you,
that has happened. So right now with the accessory dwelling units, I was actually, city council asked planning and zoning to start working on it.
Yep.
Information was brought in, presented, and now codes are getting put together, and
Right.
and they're trying to get it over to city council to vote on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a discussion with our attorney about that process and how what you just said is that planning and zoning commission is not really in charge.
They're only empowered to make
They're
a
a recommending
recommendation
body.
to their recommendation to the city council. So anytime they pass something, it's a recommendation for the city council to pass it.
Can you get something to city council even if, let's say, they don't make a recommendation? Will that still move through to city council, or will it get squashed there?
No, it absolutely does. If they recommend a city council to deny an application, then it still has to go to the city council, and the city council still has to deny it.
Right.
And so you have another chance then to go to city council
Make your case.
and argue your case.
Yeah.
And then if they deny it and you still don't like them, you go to court.
And oftentimes what happens here is opinions introduced, and you said it's quasi-judicial. This is supposed to be fact-based information that's presented here, not opinion-based, generally speaking, right? To be done correctly.
Interpretation of the code.
Yeah.
So,
And
so,
not
so
necessarily
city staff is supposed to be interpreting the code and your circumstances, and then making a recommendation to the planning commission.
Yep.
Then the planning commission approves or denies, and then they recommend to the city council for approval or denial. And then it's done unless you say, no, we're going to court. So court is the final step.
Okay. So what happens if people on, let's say, city council or planning and zoning commission do not agree with, let's say, some people in the community who are trying to push an issue on fundamentals, or different people on the commission don't agree on fundamentals of where they see the community going? This is a bigger issue that you should have handled at
You got
Like,
to stay in
appointment.
that. You have to stay in that planning cycle before you ever get to city council.
I'm just saying, like, there's some people that think that this entire county basically should be a tourist destination with retired people.
Yeah.
Right. Other people say, I want this to be a hub for tech people.
Or
and
blue
there's somebody
collar,
else,
or
or blue collar, because we're making cement or whatever the historical use of the area is, and these are very different views on where you're going with buildings, where you're going with housing, with commercial, with zoning. So how do you deal with that? How do you reach that
How
consensus?
do you move the needle?
How do you reach consensus when one person goes, no, I want a retirement community with $300,000 houses, and the other one goes, I want cool tech people down here that want to live in a shipping container? Those are completely different viewpoints.
Yes, 100%. And the needle moves really slowly. Okay, so you have to understand.
I don't like that answer.
I know. The needle moves really slowly.
Wrong answer, sir.
And you don't have a buzzer over there, do you?
Does not compare.
How many stamps and degrees you have? That's wrong.
Did somebody turn my mic off?
Yeah, seriously. Well,
Sage, turn it off.
I know. The needle moves slowly,
show you a needle.
and it should not reside with, in my opinion, should not reside with the council or the commission. It should reside with the people who do this for a living, and that's the city planner. And the city planner is the one that should be making recommendations back to the council saying, this is the direction this needle needs to move. This is the way our city is evolving. This is the way our landscape is evolving. I know more about this than you do. You're a volunteer because you work in a boutique someplace and you have time to be on the commission. But I do this for a living. I do, I take, continuing education. I know zoning, planning theory. I know how cities are built. I know, economics.
I've been doing this for X number of years.
I've been doing this for a long
Yeah.
time. You need to listen to me. And so it's the progressive city planners that are hired and put into these positions that should be pushing the needle. Okay. They should be looking at their community. We should have community surveys. Right. I just talked to a planner in a different city, and I said, you know what? What the planning center should be doing is having pop-up public comments.
What do you mean? In 2021, at the time of this recording, we no longer can just do, I don't know, a geographic survey on someone's cell phone because it's located inside the city.
But no, but that pop-up, they have to have pop-up community engagement. That's what they should be doing. But, that's what people need to be after is community engagement. Where's the community going? What's the community's opinion? Because the community, they're not going to come into a planning commission and they're not going to talk about anything unless it's right next door to them, right? Because it's NIMBY.
And that's what happens. But what if the people, this is planning, right? The people you're trying to attract aren't necessarily going to live here. Right. So if you're trying to attract a new demographic, a new group of people who have a different job or have a job, you're attracting those people. Well, I'm saying retired versus still employed. So if you're attracting retired people,
neither one of us are employed, for the record.
Yeah, I don't have a job.
That's not how it works. For us, but
I forgot where I was going with that. How do you can't account for those people because they're not here yet?
You do. That's the
those people like, oh, I'm sorry, they're not here yet.
Well, but that's the comprehensive plan. That's where you have to look outside your own boundaries and say, what do I want my community to be? And the stronger you make the community, and the better it is for people to come in, whether they're retired, whether they're young people, whether they're blue collar or white collar.
Yeah.
That's the comp plan.
Right.
That's where you look and say, this is where my building or my community is going to grow. Mm-hmm. So I need to be able to start shifting the boundaries and then making more progressive planning and zoning laws that allow more things to happen.
But this is where the comment comes in. It's like, man, that seems like a slippery slope. You want me to allow non-beige siding? What's next?
Yeah, well, I mean, but it's again, that's where the comp plan comes in. You have to the comp plan is not about beige siding. The comprehensive plan is about what's this community going to look like in 20 years, and not visually look like. Who's here?
So that's the question.
How old are they?
We have that. What happens when that document exists and that is not the direction that people still want the town to go? Or
I can't believe that it wouldn't be, because the way you make a comprehensive plan is through community engagement.
But the commissions who are in charge after the fact change pretty quickly. The people on there.
Yeah, well,
right? And
they
vote.
That shouldn't matter, because again, your city planner, it should be guiding all of the discussions. So he is the one that looks at the comprehensive plan, and when a project comes in front of him, he says, is this part of the comprehensive plan? And if it is, then my recommendation to the commission is going to be, we need to accept this, because this is the direction that we decided we were headed in.
Well, and so that's the interesting thing about when you talk about what's the community going to look like in 20 years. Most adults that move into a community have come from youth inside of that community. It would make sense to ask kids
Absolutely.
what they would be interested in sticking around for, because they're the ones that grew up in that community.
No, I don't disagree with that.
Right.
The large majority do leave. Most of them that don't leave don't come back, or the most that leave don't come back.
Do you think the majority leave?
I'd have to look at the numbers.
We need to see it, right?
Well, I'd have to look at the
just
numbers.
Anecdotally, you have to leave.
But I never came back.
If you want a modern career.
I never came back. I mean, I'm an architect.
Right.
So I left to go to college. I have a minor in engineering as well as a bachelor's degree in architecture. So I was 7 years in college. And then I went to a giant city to go practice, because I needed to get all of my experience so I could get licensed. And then I chose to come back to a smaller community, but not my community. Right. And now I'm here, and this is not my community either.
Right.
So you bring your skill set.
And this isn't any of our native community. None of us were born here.
We chose to move here.
We chose.
Yeah, you go get your skill set, and then you go to where you want to be.
But the story from Brad is one of the people that was hired in here at Emergent in one of the businesses that's located here. She was a valedictorian or something at the high school or college, and she was going to leave. I didn't think I could get a job in my community where my family and friends are. Yep. But now I can, and I don't have to leave. So if we're only creating a retirement community with tourism and restaurants and antique malls, we're not giving an opportunity for people to stay if they want to stay.
But that was exactly my point, in that you develop a skill set, you take that skill set someplace, and then you build it. So what Brad and Emergent have done is, he didn't need to live here. He didn't need to live here at all.
He chose this too.
He chose to be here too, and he brought a dynamic skill set, and he's applying that skill set, and Florence is going to be the beneficiary of it. Right. Was that Florence's comprehensive plan? No. They had no idea that Emergent was going to be a thing. Right. So that's why communities change, and that's why we have to be involved in the comprehensive plan process. And we've got to go out and get people to be involved in the comprehensive plan process. And I know it's a 20-year plan, but every 5 years we should be looking at it and saying, what is happening, and does this need revision? Sure. And because we don't know what skill sets are going to come into the community. We don't. We might want a tech sector. Yeah. We might say, I'm going to go to Silicon Valley, and I'm going to try to recruit every tech company I can to move to Florence. Well, they're not moving. Google ain't moving anywhere.
But right there, it says debt kills more dreams than failure. Doubt. We haven't even tried to get Google here.
Doubt, not debt.
Debt does too. Debt does too, guys.
Debt kills a lot of dreams.
Sorry, it worked either way, but yeah, I read my own damn quote written on the wall. Doubt kills more dreams than failure does, right?
No, and absolutely. Yeah. But again, you guys come in and you're doing something unique. I'm coming in and I'm doing my thing. Brad's coming in and he's doing his thing. Chris is coming in and doing his thing. And these are just things that happen. Nobody recruited any of us to do any of it. Nobody invited us in.
But we were fortunate enough all to find one another.
Yeah,
All in
absolutely.
the same spot, and it's like, like the dream team it's coming in.
Yeah, it's here.
Now
So-
what can we do?
We have like
Yeah.
2 or 3 jerseys left for those of you listening out there. But I mean, I don't know. There's gonna be a tryout.
But I guess my point is,
That's what I'm
cities are made by us. There's a hell of a lot of regulation, and it's really kind of shitty sometimes. And it can be a real challenge, and it can be a challenge to try and change minds. But that's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
If we're gonna build a future.
and that's my, on the back of my jersey,
Yeah.
my quote is, "Isn't this what I'm supposed to be doing?"
I thought it was going to be
So-
hearts and minds.
No.
I don't know.
Not hearts and minds. No, I always ask myself, anytime I'm asked to do something, isn't this what I'm supposed to be doing? Because I would expect my mother to come and say, that's what you're supposed to be doing, so why aren't you doing it? Right. And so I did an earlier podcast, or at least an interview, and that just kept resonating with me, and it just kept coming back because I just kept saying, they said, well, why do you have high school interns? Why wouldn't I? Isn't that what I'm supposed to be doing? I have all
Training
of this.
the next generation.
I have all of and my profession doesn't belong to me. My profession belongs to the next generation after me. My job is to make sure that they're pushed out the door and they're going to go do something.
But also
that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
And to let them play with the ball that you pass on and go, I didn't quite see that game, but okay, I guess it works. It's still a ball and it's still a game.
Yeah.
I didn't play it that way. And that's the biggest thing about asking the future generation of what they want.
Absolutely.
Instead of telling them how to do it all the time.
I tell, and every time I have a brand new intern, I say, this is how I do it.
Right.
This doesn't mean this is how you should do it. I said, my course has been my own course. This is how I practice, and this is how I do it. You go out and do it however you want to do it. Or don't do it at all. Maybe this isn't for you.
Yeah,
and
now that you
that's
know
cool
that,
too.
like, yes.
And that's totally cool. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you don't go into architecture.
Wrong game, wrong stadium, or whatever.
Yeah, what would hurt my feelings is if you got stuck in it, or it wasn't what you wanted to have happen with your life. That would hurt my feelings. So, and I say, so this is just how I do it. I'm just showing you what I do. It's important for you to go find yours.
And before we run this thing off the rails and do another double back to back,
I'm
you're
sorry.
cut off.
No,
it's not your
got,
fault.
I got more.
I know you do.
got-
But I need.
I got a whole book to go over.
I am gonna
need-
You gotta go.
He's got to go, but I need to get the 4-minute version of the Euclidean zoning and planning rundown.
So Euclidean zoning is it's based in history. Euclid, the Greek philosopher and scholar, sort of invented Euclidean geometry.
Yeah.
Okay, and so Euclidean geometry is straight lines. Okay. And so what we have done is we've taken the Euclidean approach to planning and zoning, and then we kind of try to put a grid around our cities. Mm-hmm. And then what we do is find those most compatible uses and put them next to each other.
Mm-hmm. So this is when we're talking about residential R1 to R2 to R3.
Yep. So residential's here,
commercial.
industrial's over here, commercial's over here, and that's the basic idea of
Segregation
zoning.
of one
Of
activity
u-
function. Uses.
Uses.
Sure, yeah.
So
That's
now
what I mean.
that you're saying segregation, I just wanted to
No,
go,
I know.
okay, hold on.
No, that's a good correction to make sure that, yeah. So what we're talking about is segregation of land uses, and it's compartmentalizing it into regions inside of a city's.
Because you don't want a coal-fired energy plant next to your single-family home.
Some people don't.
Now, it'd be a nice grid booster.
Yeah.
Can I just plug in? Yeah. But what that has done is created compartmentalizations. Mm-hmm. And so the phrase I always heard used and that I've always used since then was planning happens at the edges. Okay. So when you have a single-family house and it's right next to a coal-fired energy plant, that boundary that's the problem child. Right? Because I don't want you to build over here because I live right next to you. And I don't want my single-family house to be right next to smokestacks. Right. And so planning always happens at the edges. Okay. If you're in the middle of a neighborhood, you don't care. No,
Right.
because
You're insulated.
Yeah, because you're single family on both sides and front and back, and everything's good. Your property values are great, but first thing they do is as soon as you butt up against them, they're like, "Oh, my property values are going to go down, and my neighborhood's going to
taxes
turn
are
to
gonna go
crap."
up.
But even in the middle of the neighborhood, you still typically don't necessarily want change. So an accessory dwelling unit could be in your neighborhood, and that's a change in your neighborhood. It's in the middle.
And now they're going to say, "Oh, well, okay, who lives there, and where are they parking, and is it off-street parking? And don't park in front of my house."
Have you been at all the meetings?
No,
It
no,
sounds
no.
like you've been at every single meeting we've been
I have
at.
been at every single meeting ever for the last 30 years.
This is why
This does not change. This does not change.
I've been at every meeting ever.
I've been to 4, which means I've been to all of them. Because
Dude,
They're all the same.
They are too.
And everybody that shows up, they're
it.
all
Why
the
here?
same.
Why now? Why me?
But seriously, this is the conversation that makes you run at a wall 100 miles an hour because it's like, what are you talking about?
it's always at the edges.
Okay.
Right? So
Yeah, that
planning
makes
is
sense.
always at the edges. But our zoning is based in this sort of Euclidean geometry. And that was the easiest way to plan things.
Okay.
And
Easy's not an equal sign to best either, right? So, in your opinion, is Euclidean dated, or is it out? Is it good or bad?
well, it's been changing.
Okay.
And so how it's been changing is just in how you define the districts. So it's not like my lot size has changed.
Right.
And I'm not, R1 and I'm not next to R2 and that it's not that I'm changing those boundaries. Right. I'm changing the definition of what happens in those boundaries.
So a lawyer got a hold of Euclidean things and decided, well, you didn't say I couldn't do that, but that means I can do these other things. Right?
Yeah, or you get more
bending
progressive and you say,
Yeah.
you know what, ADUs are a really good way to increase density, increase land use, maybe even for the government, increase taxes.
And it's the same use if you're going to live in it in a residential.
Yeah, and so they slowly, again, that needle moves pretty slow, but they slowly rewrite those regulations and say, okay, well, I'm not going to change the boundaries of R1, but I am going to redefine. So, for example, a really good example is downtown historic districts.
Yeah.
So downtown historic districts was never, there was always commercial, C1, right? That's what Main Street was, C1. And then they realized that they needed to create a different district, and they call them overlay districts. Right. So it's still C1, but now I've got residential up on top.
Like a mixed use.
Yeah, it goes mixed use because that's a more progressive zoning type. And so that's how changes are being made.
Yeah.
But somebody has to push that needle, and you're saying it's typically a city planner, not necessarily people in the community. Is it people in the community coming forward?
They push the
or
planner.
developers.
Yep, there you go.
Kind of pushing it forward. So
And
I asked,
it's really not even a developer necessarily, because we think of developers as somebody from Denver that comes and brings $1 billion in and wants to buy up the whole Main Street, right? That's the way we think about development. But it's not. It's the individual landowner or the individual building owner that comes in and says, this is what I want to do with my building. Mm-hmm. And the planner should then say, oh, you know what? That sounds like an overlay district. Maybe let me work on that.
Versus, no, you can't do that there.
Yeah, exactly. That should be the response.
Yeah, I mean, it's been our experience.
Not what you said should be the result.
right.
But what I said should be the response, which is let me work on that for you.
Fine. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I mean, and that's been by and large an experience that I think that we've had.
So I think the issue that for us anyway is that the needle moves ever so slowly, and those comprehensive plans and master plans have not been updated, I don't think, fast enough. So for example, here in Florence, you've got a third of the land mass in industrial use with a dozen houses in it. Like, why was that? And there's a multi-use overlay on half of it, which is great, right? That's what you just said. That's a move in the right direction. But not much has happened on that part of town because it's industrial. It's industrial zoning. It's industrial use. Yeah, there's industrial on the west side, east side, not so much. So why hasn't that been rezoned? Why isn't that, why isn't that pulled into the residential area?
Well, frankly, it's because no one's asked. Because the people that own those pieces of property
haven't done it.
They have fallen into disuse, right? There's nothing going on over there. and that's just vacant land, and it's still zoned industrial, and somebody just has to go in and say, I don't think that should be industrial anymore, and I think we need some new housing options, and I would like for you to consider changing the zoning on these pieces of property, and that it will likely make them profitable versus vacant pieces of land right now.
2 or 3 property owners in an area.
That aren't generating property taxes. They're generating any development. They're not pulling in population.
Makes sense.
So we have to push the needle, because if we're not asking, and if we're not directing, not we design professionals, but we the people who live in this community need to say, this needs, we have a housing crisis. Why is this industrial land vacant? Why can't it be
closer to town?
Those words have been spoken at multiple meetings.
No, absolutely. And actually I have heard the planner speak them himself.
Sure. Yeah.
So
how do we push the needle again?
You just keep pushing.
Just keep poking the bear.
Yep.
Wake it up.
Yep.
I mean, I'm good with that. Everybody knows that. I mean, I'll be, we'll see.
But there's a difference between we've been poking it and actually getting it to move. We're talking about the bear.
But sometimes folks like yourself buy a chunk, and then we say,
I got a couple.
What do you want to do? And it takes a drawing, a conceptual drawing of how many units, how big are they, what are the lots, how much have we thought about this in detail, and then presenting that and saying, look what we can do, but you got to help us do it.
This is the visual communication coming in.
This is correct. Graphic communication. You've got to help us do it. This is what we want to do. We can put this on the tax rolls. This is only a win-win, guys.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that we have talked about. Even our project thus far, we couldn't do a certain thing where we were going to have one unit. We were going to do a night watchman's quarters. Now instead we have a 4-unit hotel that's going to benefit. So they pushed us in the right direction, and the benefit was not only do we end up with a business of 4 shipping container units, they end up with the taxes of that business, and so it is a win-win.
And the water taps.
And the water taps, and the other things that are going to come, and a chance for housing to actually become reasonable, so the area becomes more attractive to the people that need to work in the support industries. And so as long as everybody in the room understands that us working together is about the benefit, and somebody saying no so that a project stops, and that's just no because I said no, that's only a demonstration of who the boss is.
Well, and again, I don't think they should say no because it's no. I think they should say no, but let me think about that. How do we get it to work? Okay. And I think that's the kind of progressive nature that you need working at city staff. It's not going to be the planning commissioners. It's not going to be the one person that says, well, I don't want that in my community. Right. Well, okay, but that makes no difference, because what you're doing is all you're supposed to be doing is interpreting the code. Right. You're not supposed to just basically have an opinion. Is this accurately interpreted? And did the city staff make a reasonable recommendation? And are there any changes that you need to consider? Because that's the only time when you need a variance. That's the only time when the commission should come in and say, okay, well, let's talk about this. Let's figure it out, because there has to be something that varies from the code.
But we could spend 3 more hours.
I know you could.
But we can't.
You got to go.
What we have to do is so everybody has to know who we were talking to, what you do, and
where people can find
you. People can find you, right? So
yes, my company is P3 Communities.
Okay.
You can find me on the web.
There you go. P3 Communities. Put it into your little Google box. Yep. And look this man up if you've got questions when it comes to architecture. Obviously, he's helped us with a ton of things.
Just don't make me do podcasts, because this has been nerve-wracking.
This has been amazing.
Man. Yeah.
I need 3 more hours. I have so many questions. I have a book out that you won't let me open.
I'm sorry,
and talk
man.
about.
I can't let you do it.
We're going to have you back.
We can have a version 2.
Way more information that people need.
Follow us, like us, share, subscribe. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, or wherever you consume your podcast.